Nobody cares. Focus on your life. 12 Stoic Lessons for Inner Power. Nobody cares. That's freedom. Accepting this harsh truth unlocks your power to stop performing and start becoming. Hey guys, tonight we're doing something different. You're lying there, eyes adjusting to the dark, and all around you the noise of the world is finally starting to quiet down. But inside, the thoughts still hum. All the little questions. Did they notice? Did they care? Did I matter today? Let me take that burden off your chest real quick. They probably didn't. And weirdly enough, that's not the tragedy it sounds like. It might just be the greatest relief you never asked for. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere far off, let me know your city and local time in the comments. Always cool seeing where you all drift off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through a world that spins fast, too fast. People scroll, talk, dismiss, move on. And in the middle of all this blur, you find yourself wondering why your pain didn't make headlines, why you're silent, effort wasn't applauded, why the world keeps turning even though you're barely keeping up. Here's the quiet truth. Nobody really cares. That might sting at first. It sounds cold, but lean in a little closer. It's also the door to something extraordinary, because if no one's really watching, then who are you performing for? Who are you seeking permission from? Whose timeline are you racing? When you stop needing the world to care, you get something better than attention. You get your power back. The moment the crowd goes quiet is the moment you start hearing your own voice again. But it's like Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor by day, existential philosopher by night, once scribbled in his journal. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. That's a burn, but it's also a wake-up call. And yeah, historians still argue whether his notes were even meant to be read by others. That's how real the reflection was. You stop expecting applause, and in its place, you start building something sturdier. Character, direction, the kind of discipline that doesn't need to be tweeted about to be real. The world trains you from a young age to equate visibility with value. Your first "look at me" lands with claps. Your first gold star. Your first like. All these signals teach you that being seen equals being enough. But what happens when the audience leaves? When the algorithm forgets you? When your parents, friends, even mentors don't quite get what you're trying to do with your life? Nothing happens unless you let it, because you were never meant to be built on external scaffolding. You're meant to be like bedrock, steady, unmoved, even if no one notices. Think of the Stoics. They lived before social media, before coffee runs and life coaches and endless feedback loops. And still, they were obsessed with one thing: what you do when no one's watching. That's where this script begins. With a radical idea, stop outsourcing your worth. You've got to reclaim it, piece by quiet piece. Let's paint a picture. You're building a house. You've got bricks, cement, wood, but instead of laying a proper foundation, you keep rearranging the curtains, changing the paint, planting flowers out front, all because you hope the neighbors will be impressed. Meanwhile, the whole thing's sinking. That's what living for recognition does. Looks fine for a while, until a storm hits. But when you let go of that need to be seen, to be praised, you start laying real groundwork. You start getting quiet with your intentions. You stop trying to win life and start trying to understand it. Here's a wild historical tidbit for you. Ancient Roman women used crocodile dung as sunscreen. Yeah, sunscreen. Just let that image settle in for a second. The point is, people have been doing wild, performative things to fit in or seem worthy for centuries. Some of that absurdity lives on in us, just digital now. But what if, instead, you measured your worth in private effort, in the books you read, the promises you keep to yourself, the habits you stack quietly, day by day? Picture a person walking, alone before sunrise. No camera, no playlist, just them and the sound of their steps. That's real. That's where peace starts. You might wonder, what if nobody notices? What if all my effort fades into obscurity? And here's the twist. If it was worth doing, it doesn't matter who saw it. The sun doesn't ask for applause. It just rises. Every single day. That's your model now. Quiet power. Undeniable presence. Showing up for your life not because someone might give you a standing ovation, but because it aligns with who you are becoming. In fact, here's a question to close your day with. Would I still do this if no one clapped? Would you still write that chapter? Still keep that boundary? Still wake up early, work late, or breathe through the hard moments? If yes, you're already free, because the day you realize nobody cares in the way you once hoped is the same day you realize you're no longer performing. You're living, fully, authentically, with no script but your own. And that kind of life, it doesn't need applause. It earns respect, the quiet kind, the kind that lives inside your chest when your head hits the pillow and you know, without question, that you showed up. Here's the challenge for tomorrow. Act like nobody's watching, because they probably aren't. And that's your chance to finally show up for yourself. Your worth is not equal to applause if no one claps. Would you still show up? That answer reveals your true compass. You scroll through your feed, heart skipping a beat with each like, each comment. Your photo gets traction, your words get shared. For a moment, everything feels right. But as the screen dims and the phone slips from your hand, a strange emptiness creeps in, because deep down, you know the truth. External validation is a trap. It starts innocently. A parent claps when you take your first step. A teacher gives you a gold star. Your first crush smiles back. Little bursts of approval, they feel good. They shape you. And before long, you start chasing them without even knowing it. But the more you feed on that approval, the more dependent you become. You stop asking, is this meaningful to me? And start wondering, will they like it? That's how your compass gets hijacked. Soon, you're not even living your own life anymore. Stoicism slices through that illusion with brutal clarity. One of its best mic drops comes from Epictetus, who said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." A sentence that, frankly, would destroy half the influencer economy if taken seriously. But that's the point, because growth, real, deep, uncomfortable, character-building growth, often looks unappealing. It doesn't photograph well. It can't be filtered. It makes people squirm. And worst of all, it doesn't always get likes. Historians still debate how Stoic teachings, especially Epictetus's, survived so long without being diluted by ego. Some argue it's precisely because they didn't appeal to the crowd. They weren't meant to impress. They were meant to wake you up. Think about how many people are trapped in lives that aren't theirs. the med student who really wants to paint, the lawyer who hates arguing but loves writing poetry, the parent who stays silent at the dinner table because their truth might make others uncomfortable. That it's everywhere. You've seen it. You've done it. And the reason is simple: external. Validation rewards you for fitting in, not for standing out. It encourages masks, not mirrors. But the price? Oh, it's steep. You shrink yourself. You hesitate. You say yes when you mean no. You stay when you should leave. You chase applause instead of alignment. And slowly, invisibly, you become a stranger to yourself. And here's the kicker: validation is fickle. One day, you're the golden child. The next, forgotten, criticized, ignored. Ever heard of Diogenes? He was this ancient Greek philosopher who lived in a barrel. Literally. Historians say he rejected all societal norms and once wandered around in daylight with a lantern, claiming to search for an honest man that he didn't crave approval. He lit it on fire. That's extreme, sure. But it makes a point. If your identity depends on the crowd, you'll lose yourself the moment they turn. Now let's bring this home. Imagine you're working on something important, a side project, a habit, a new path. You post it. You share it. And crickets. No likes. No encouragement. Just silence. Would you still keep going? If the answer is no, then your motivation doesn't belong to you. It's rented from the crowd. And that rent? It's due every single day. But if the answer is yes, then congratulations. You've found something priceless: intrinsic drive. The kind that doesn't burn out when the attention fades. Stoicism teaches us to act not for attention, but for alignment. Not to impress, but to express. Not to chase validation, but to stay anchored in purpose. You might wonder, does that mean we should reject all feedback? Not at all. Feedback can be useful, but needing it? That's where you give away your power. Here's a practical way to check yourself. Think about something you're proud of, something you created, said, stood for. Now ask, if nobody ever praised me for this, would I still feel proud? That answer is everything. Validation becomes dangerous not because it exists, but because we confuse it with truth. We start thinking that silence equals failure, that rejection equals unworthiness. But that's just noise. That's other people's projections, fears, expectations, none of which have anything to do with your value. And there's something tragic about waiting for permission to be yourself. Imagine standing at the edge of your own potential, holding back, not because you're not ready, but because you're waiting for applause that may never come. That's not life. That's a performance. And a tiring one at that. Oh, how do you break free? Start by practicing being misunderstood. Say your truth without over-explaining. Make decisions that others might not get. Walk away from conversations where you feel the need to convince that in other words, build a tolerance for silence. Because silence isn't rejection, it's space. And in that space, you hear something better than praise. You hear yourself. You start to recognize your own voice again. The one that whispers, "This feels right," even if no one claps. The one that says, "Keep going," even if the room is empty. You become your own source. And when that happens, you don't stop caring about people. You just stop depending on them to feel whole. It's like walking into a room and not needing to shrink or puff up. You just are, unapologetically. That's not arrogance. That's sovereignty. And yeah, not everyone will like it. Some will call you cold. Others will project their insecurities. But you won't be shaken. Because you didn't build yourself on their opinions in the first place. So here's your question for tonight. If everyone stopped noticing your effort tomorrow, would you still show up? Would you still train, still write, still speak your truth, still choose the hard path? If the answer is yes, then your freedom has already begun. Because the moment you stop needing to be seen is the moment you start truly living. Validation is a trap you built from gold stars to likes, how you slowly outsourced your self-worth, and how to reclaim it. You wake up, already a little tense. Notifications ping. A text from someone that feels colder than usual. A vague comment online that might be about you. A coworker who didn't reply to your message yesterday. Your brain kicks into high gear, analyzing, rereading, trying to predict reactions, smooth things over, fix what might not even be broken. But here's the truth that the Stoics tattooed into their worldview. You can't control that. And yet, you try. You try so hard. You draft the perfect response. You rehearse what to say in the meeting. You wonder if your silence was taken the wrong way. You scroll through the story views, wondering why they didn't watch. All of this, your mind, your energy, your peace, spent trying to manage the unmanageable. That it's exhausting. Epictetus said it simply, but powerfully. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. That's the Stoic starting line, not a slogan, a boundary. And wisdom begins the moment you learn to see the line and stop jumping over it. Let's play this out. You're stuck in traffic, late to a meeting. You stew, curse under your breath, grip the steering wheel like it owes you something. But what changes? The traffic? Nope, just your blood pressure and your mood. And maybe your entire day. Now imagine someone cuts you off mid-sentence in a conversation. You feel disrespected. You replay the moment a dozen times later. What you should have said. What you could have said. But again, what did you gain? Just a tighter jaw and a bigger emotional bruise. Here's where Stoicism isn't just nice philosophy. It's practical self-defense. You get one piece of the puzzle. Your thoughts, your actions, your responses. That's it. The rest? That's noise. That's weather. That's other people's storms. And historians still argue about how consistently ancient Stoics actually practiced this ideal, whether they really stayed calm when insulted or betrayed. But whether they succeeded every time or not isn't the point. The point is they trained for it. Like mental athletes, like emotional black belts. And you can too, because life, it throws curveballs with no warning. People leave, plans fall through, bosses lash out, friends misunderstand you. That's not personal. It's just life being life. So what can you do? You control the only thing you've ever truly owned, your response. And not just any response, a thoughtful one. Not a reactive blur. Not the emotional knee-jerk that feels good for 5 seconds, but haunts you for 5 days. Let's make this real. Say someone you care about pulls away, stops calling, goes quiet. You could panic, spiral, invent 100 scenarios. Or you could pause, breathe. Choose dignity over desperation. You remind yourself, their behavior is theirs. My worth is mine. And with that, you reclaim something priceless, your center. Another example, job uncertainty. Maybe layoffs are rumored. Budgets are shrinking. You feel the anxiety rising. You can't control the economy or your manager's decisions. But you can control how you prepare, how you save, how you sharpen your skills. That's not helplessness. That's precision. And precision is where peace lives. You stop spraying your attention everywhere. You aim it like a laser. You don't try to control the wind. You adjust your sail. That's how you start building what the Stoics called ataraxia, inner tranquility. Not because life gets quieter, but because you do. And look, this isn't about apathy. You're not becoming a robot. It's okay to care. It's okay to hope. It's okay to want things to go well. But the trick is to stop needing them to. Because when your peace depends on the world behaving exactly how you wish, you're always going to be disappointed. Now here's a weird but wonderful historical tidbit. Ancient Stoics practiced mental rehearsals of disaster. They'd imagine losing their possessions, their jobs, even loved ones, not to torture themselves, but to rehearse serenity. It was called premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils. Dark? Maybe. But freeing? Absolutely. Because once you've accepted that the storm can come, you stop fearing it and start preparing to stand calmly in the middle of it. And over time, you get stronger. You stop yelling at the rain. You grab an umbrella. You stop obsessing over someone else's tone. You clarify or you let go. You stop wasting energy trying to control outcomes. You double down on input. That shift is everything. It's what separates reactivity from resilience. It's what turns panic into presence. And most importantly, it's what gives you your life back. Because here's what nobody tells you. You're not overwhelmed because your life is out of control. You're overwhelmed because you're trying to control everything. But when you start letting go of what was never yours to manage, everything shifts. Your body relaxes. Your thoughts slow down. Your direction sharpens. You stop playing chess with people's opinions. You stop checking for applause. You stop wasting time hoping someone will finally understand you. Instead, you act with clarity. You build with care. You respond with grace. Let's land this plane with a question. What are you still trying to control today that you simply can't? The text that hasn't come. The outcome that hasn't arrived. The mood of the person beside you. The opinion someone might be forming. Now ask, what can you control right now? Your breath. Your posture. Your next choice. Your focus. Start there. Because that's where peace begins. Not in controlling the world, but in mastering yourself within it. Control what you can. Let go of the rest. Peace begins the moment you stop wrestling the world and master your inner weather. You're scrolling. Another post, another opinion, another crowd marching in one direction. You pause. Something about it doesn't sit right, but it's popular, and maybe you're just overthinking. Everyone else seems fine with it. Maybe you should be, too. But then again, maybe not. Here's the thing you're about to embrace. Live for your inner standards, not the crowd. This isn't easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing you ever do, especially in a world where consensus equals comfort and comfort equals belonging. But if you always move with the mob, you'll eventually lose track of your own feet. See, there's this quiet tension inside anyone who's trying to live with integrity. It goes like this. I want to be true to myself, but I also don't want to be exiled by my peers, judged at the dinner table, unfollowed, misinterpreted, disliked. And so, we compromise. We soften our edges. We tell ourselves little stories to justify the trade-offs. It's not worth the fight. They won't get it. Maybe I'm just being difficult. But inside, something dims. The Stoics warned us about this long before likes existed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The approval of the crowd is a weak, an unstable foundation. Why? Because the crowd changes its mind constantly. What's trendy today is cringe tomorrow. What's praised now might be canceled next week. Historians point out that even during his reign, Marcus, literally emperor of the Roman Empire, often had to stand against popular opinion. Even in supreme power, he wrestled with the pressure to conform. Think about that. If an emperor had to battle public influence, what chance does your group chat give you? But that's exactly the point. You don't live to be praised. You live to be principled, and that means creating a kind of internal compass, one that doesn't waver when the winds of popular opinion change. It means anchoring yourself in values so deeply that even when the world claps for what you oppose or mocks what you believe, you remain centered. Now let's get a little weird with it. In medieval France, there was a tradition where people would put animals on trial. Yes, animals. Pigs, goats, even insects. Whole towns would gather to judge a creature for crimes like stealing crops or injuring a child. Some were sentenced to death. Ridiculous? Absolutely. But it shows you something. Crowds are often absurd. And if you live by their verdict, you're going to end up compromising your soul just to fit into a courtroom you were never meant to enter. So, what does this look like in real life? Say you're at work and everyone's cutting corners. The unspoken rule is clear: speed over quality, results over ethics. If you don't follow, you're the bottleneck. The difficult one: do you compromise? Or do you stand firm, knowing it might cost you points? Or you're at a gathering, and someone starts tearing into another person who's not there. It's framed as a joke, but it cuts. You laugh awkwardly to blend in, but inside, you know you just betrayed something in yourself. These are not big public betrayals. They're micro moments, and they matter because each time you abandon your standard to gain approval, you chip away at your peace. And peace? It doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being aligned. Think of your values as the North Star. They don't move. They don't adjust for weather. They shine regardless of who's looking. That's how you need to move. Quietly, clearly, consistently. And yes, sometimes that means walking alone. Sometimes you'll be misunderstood. People will question your silence, your boundaries, your refusal to play along. That's not failure. That's the tax you pay for authenticity. And it's worth every step, because living by your own standard doesn't mean being rigid. It means being responsible. It means showing up to life as someone who's already decided what matters, not waiting for the group to decide it for you. That it's the opposite of arrogance. Arrogance says, I'm always right. Integrity says, I know what's right for me, and I'm willing to stand by it, even if it costs me comfort. And here's the secret most people don't realize. When you consistently live by your inner standard, you stop performing. You don't need to puff yourself up. You don't need to shrink. You just are. And that presence, that calm, steady, not for sale energy, it changes rooms. It earns respect, not the kind that's loud, but the kind that lasts. The Stoics weren't trying to win arguments. They were trying to win themselves. They didn't care about the crowd's noise. They cared about the silence that came from a life lived in truth. So tonight, here's your check-in. If no one ever applauded your life, would you still be proud of it? Not based on their reactions. Just yours. The way you spoke. The way you treated people. The way you held your line when others bent theirs. And if the answer is no, that's not shame. That's opportunity. Because the path to integrity isn't grand. It's quiet. It's forged in tiny moments where you choose what's right over what's easy. So choose it. Choose your standard. Even if no one claps, live by standards, not trends. When you stop chasing trends and start following your personal code, life gets quieter and clearer. Let's say someone compliments you. Out of the blue, glowing praise. Your chest warms. Your confidence spikes. You feel seen. Now, someone else criticizes you harshly. Same day, suddenly, you're second-guessing everything. That proud moment you just had, gone, replaced by a gut knot and a mental spiral. Why? Because you gave both those opinions the same power. Praise and criticism, same coin, different sides. And in Stoicism, both are treated the same way, with distance. That may sound odd. Praise feels good. Why would you treat it with suspicion? Because the moment your self-worth hinges on someone else's view, whether it's applause or attack, you've handed over control of your identity. If praise lifts you too high, criticism will crush you just as fast. Epictetus said, "If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your own integrity." A harsh line, but necessary. Because when your peace is dictated by voices outside your mind, you become a puppet, pulled by strings you can't see. Here's the test. If someone praises your work and it makes your whole day, and then someone else mocks it and that ruins your week, you're still not anchored. You're adrift, pleasantly or painfully, but adrift just the same. It's a weird thing, isn't it? You work hard on something, a story, a project, a decision you made with care. Then someone compliments it, and suddenly it feels more real. Someone else criticizes it, and now it's tainted. But the work didn't change, just the lighting. In someone else's mind, historians still debate how much the Stoics genuinely felt emotion versus simply managed it well. Did they really stay unaffected by public reaction? Probably not 100%. But what they aimed for was consistency, steadiness, an inner world that didn't shatter with praise or shrink from criticism. Let's put this into something you can hold. Imagine you're wearing a shirt you really like. You pass one person, they say it's great. You feel validated. Then someone else says it's tacky. You feel embarrassed. But the shirt? Still the same. It wasn't the shirt that changed. It was you. Or, rather, the amount of weight you gave to outside voices. Now think about this. There are things you've done, choices you've made, that were never praised. And yet, you still feel proud of them. Why? Because they were aligned with your values. You didn't do them for praise. You did them from principle. That's what Stoicism teaches. To stop basing your peace on applause. To start building it on alignment. And it's not about becoming numb. This isn't emotional coldness. It's emotional independence. Here's where it gets strange. Praise can become a prison. Sounds backwards, right? But it's true. When you get addicted to being liked, you start performing, shaping your truth to fit others' tastes, softening your voice, rounding your edges. And before long, you're not living anymore. You're curating yourself. You become cautious, calculated, not because you're wise, but because you're scared to lose approval. And that leash? It's disguised as kindness. It feels warm, but it's still a leash. There's a story, possibly apocryphal, but delightful nonetheless, that Diogenes once walked into a banquet, uninvited, and insulted every person there. When asked why, he said, "I insult equally those who praise me and those who condemn me. They are both thieves of my peace." Is it extreme? Yes. But there's a lesson in there that don't let flattery blind you any more than you let criticism break you. In fact, here's a healthy exercise. When someone praises you, say thank you, then move on. When someone criticizes you, reflect for a moment, then move on. Either way, don't let their words camp out in your brain for the rest of the week, because both are just echoes of someone else's world. Yours is where you live, and you've got to protect that territory. Let's make it personal that you've been quietly working on something. A habit, a project, a mindset shift. It hasn't been easy. Maybe nobody sees the effort yet. Maybe a few. People criticize it. Maybe someone praises you one day and ignores you the next. Ask yourself, would you still choose this path if no one ever commented on it again? If the answer is yes, then congratulations. You've stepped into real freedom, because when you treat both praise and criticism as visitors, not landlords, you stay in charge of your emotional house. Here's a quirky historical tidbit for the night. In ancient Rome, when a general returned from war victorious, he was given a parade. People chanted his name, threw flowers, shouted praise. But right behind him, in his chariot, was a slave. And that slave's job was to whisper in his ear, "Remember, you are only mortal." Even at the peak of glory, the Stoics wanted grounding, perspective, humility. You don't need a whispering servant, but you do need a voice inside that says, "This doesn't define me, neither the cheer nor the jeer." Because when you build that kind of stability, everything changes. You no longer collapse when misunderstood. You no longer chase validation like oxygen. You no longer panic at disapproval. Instead, you return again and again to your core, the place where your worth already lives, the place where your values make sense, whether anyone else gets them or not. Let's close with this question. If no one ever praised this life you're building, would it still feel worth it? And if someone criticized it tomorrow, would you crumble, or would you smile, stay grounded, and keep walking? Because when you can answer yes and yes to both of those, then you're no longer swayed by applause or silence. You're free. Praise and criticism, two masks, same game. When both the cheer and the jeer lose power over you, you're finally free. You hear a voice, yours, in your head, asking again, "Am I enough?" It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just persistent, whispering through the cracks in your confidence, surfacing in quiet moments when no one's around to tell you how you're doing. And the dangerous part is, you start looking outside for an answer. What did they say? Did they notice? Did I get picked, liked, rewarded? But the Stoics would smile at all that noise and calmly tell you, your value is self-created. Let's take a breath here, because this one's big. It means your worth isn't inherited. It's not handed out. It's not found in approval, status, success, beauty, or charm. It's built from the inside, quietly, repeatedly. Yet, most people never stop to ask, where do I think my value comes from? They just absorb the default answers. A job title, a number on a scale, a relationship status, a social media account. But ask yourself this: what happens when those disappear? What happens when the job ends? The body changes, the applause dies down. Does your worth go with it? Not if you're doing life the Stoic way. Seneca, who managed to be both a respected philosopher and an advisor to a violent emperor, tricky gig, once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." That quote hits harder when you realize most of that waste happens while chasing other people's measurements of worth. Historians still wrestle with how Seneca balanced his wealth and power with his Stoic beliefs. Was he a hypocrite or a pragmatic realist navigating an empire? Either way, he made one thing clear in his writings: value is not given, it's forged. You forge your worth every time you wake up early instead of hitting snooze. You forge it when you choose kindness instead of sarcasm, patience instead of snapping, truth instead of comfort. These little acts, no one may see them, but they're stacking. They're building something solid inside you. Let's get practical. Imagine two people. One has a sparkling resume, a beautiful life online, but lives in quiet chaos. Constant comparison, chasing the next thing, burning out. Always one compliment. Away from feeling okay. The other, less flashy, shows up on time, listens deeply, keeps their word, moves through the world with calm confidence. Not because they're perfect, but because they know who they are. Who do you trust more? Who do you want to become? Because that second person, that's not luck. That's built. Every decision you make, what you eat, how you talk to strangers, how you talk to yourself when you fail, it all contributes to your inner value. It's like laying bricks, each one small, but together, a fortress. Here's a quirky, under-the-radar historical nugget for you. Some Roman soldiers were paid in salt. That's where the word salary comes from. Salt wasn't just a seasoning, it was currency. Essential, durable, simple. Your value? Think of it like that. Quiet, unassuming, but vital. And here's where it gets tricky. If you're still waiting for someone else to tell you you're worthy, you're outsourcing your life. You've given your emotional salary to someone else's bank. But when you self-source, when you measure worth by your own integrity, you stop needing the outside world to validate you. You start validating yourself, and that doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you grounded. It's the difference between a person who walks into a room trying to be noticed and a person who walks in knowing they belong, even if no one says a word. That's the quiet power of self-created value. It's not reactive. It's not clingy. It's steady. And here's another thing people forget. When you build your own value, you also raise your standards. You stop chasing every shiny thing. You stop staying in spaces that drain you. You stop saying yes just to avoid conflict. Why? Because you've got something to protect now. You. And you don't protect something you don't value. Think about that. How many times have you tolerated disrespect, chaos, or confusion simply because you didn't see your worth clearly? But once you do, once that internal switch flips, you start walking differently. You start choosing differently. You start building a life that honors your identity instead of constantly borrowing one from others. And yes, it's a process. There will be days when you forget, when the old patterns whisper, when the compliments feel like oxygen again. But that's okay, because value isn't a feeling. It's a practice. It's built when you do what's right even when no one's watching. When you keep your promises, especially the ones you make to yourself. When you fail and still choose to try again. When you stop begging for recognition and start living with intention. So tonight, ask yourself this. Am I becoming someone I respect, not someone they like? Not someone who gets praise, but someone you admire in the mirror. And if the answer is no, then good, because that means you see it. That means you're not lost, you're aware. And awareness is power. Because once you see where you're outsourcing your worth, you can stop. You can reclaim it. You can begin again. no applause needed. You create your own value. Your worth isn't inherited or given. It's earned through your quiet, daily decisions. You hear the word courage, and instantly your mind flashes to something big. Maybe a firefighter charging into a burning building, a protester standing firm in front of a tank, or a speech delivered in front of a roaring, skeptical crowd. Heroic, loud, visible. But here's the quiet truth. Inner courage is quiet but unshakable. The Stoics didn't define courage by noise. They defined it by consistency, by what you do when no one is clapping, when no one understands, and when everything in you says to run or shrink. But you stayed at that's courage. It's not the movie moment. It's the mundane moment. It's getting out of bed when grief is heavy. It's saying no when yes would keep the peace. It's holding your tongue when anger wants to take the wheel. Courage in the Stoic sense isn't about slaying dragons. It's about showing up with your values intact, especially when it's hard. Epictetus said, "You may fetter my leg, but my will not even Zeus himself can overpower." Let that sink in. You can lose status, comfort, relationships. But if your will, your inner resolve, stays untouched, then you've lost nothing essential. Now let's break this down in your life that you're in a conversation where everyone is laughing at something that feels wrong. Jokes that cut deep. You feel it. You know it's off. The room waits for your laugh. You don't give it. That silence? That's courage. Or maybe you're invited to a party you don't want to go to, but you say yes because you should. And then, one day you don't. You stay home, journal, rest, reclaim your time. No big scene, just a quiet no. That choice? That's courage too. Historians still debate how much of Stoicism was theoretical versus practiced. Were these guys really walking around as unshakable forces? Or were they just writing themselves into the kind of people they aspired to be? Either way, what matters isn't the legend. It's the model. It's the ideal, live with courage, even if it's invisible. Now, let's get into a quirky tidbit. There's an old theory that Spartan warriors, those tough-as-nails symbols of grit, were taught from a young age not to boast. They were punished not for fear, but for bragging. Why? Because real courage doesn't need to announce itself. That same idea runs deep through Stoicism. Real strength doesn't raise its voice. It raises your standards. What does quiet courage look like day to day? It's starting the side project when your inner critic is screaming that it's sending the application even after rejection. It's admitting, "I was wrong," without blaming anyone. It's facing the hard conversation instead of ghosting. That it's being honest, not because it's convenient, but because it's who you are. And here's the kicker. You don't feel courageous. When you're being courageous, most of the time, you feel shaky, small, like you're making a mistake. Because courage doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like vulnerability. And that's why most people wait. Wait until they feel braver, more prepared, less exposed. But that moment never comes. Because courage isn't a feeling that precedes action. It's a decision you make in the presence of fear. It's the whisper, "I will do this anyway." And it changes you. Each time you act in alignment with your values, especially when it's uncomfortable, you deepen your identity. You stop asking the world who you are. You start telling it, and slowly, that voice in your head that once whispered fear, it starts whispering faith. You begin to trust yourself. You don't need a big speech. You don't need everyone to understand. You just need that one small internal Not, "This is right. This is mine. I will do it." Picture someone afraid of public speaking. Every nerve is on edge. Their hands sweat. Their stomach flips. But they walk on stage anyway. They speak. They finish. And suddenly, they're not the same person anymore. Not because the speech changed anything, but because they showed up. That's what courage does. It shapes you, not all at once, but in small, repeated acts. And the best part, you don't need to be fearless. To be courageous, in fact, courage only exists because fear exists, and oh fear, no bravery, just routine. And so, if you've been waiting to feel ready, let this be the moment you stop. Start scared, start awkward, start uncertain, but start, because each time you act from your inner standard, despite discomfort, you reinforce a new truth. I can trust myself. And when that becomes real, you become untouchable, not in arrogance, but in resilience. So here's the invitation tonight. Where in your life are you waiting for permission to be brave? What have you postponed out of fear? What truth are you avoiding because you think no one will understand? And more importantly, what would change if you did it anyway? Remember, courage isn't loud. Sometimes, it's just the quiet decision to stand your ground, to speak your truth, to try again tomorrow. No one may see it. No one may praise it, but you will know, and that knowing, that's the foundation of real strength. Courage isn't loud. It's consistent. Bravery looks less like a battle cry, more like showing up on hard days. Picture this. The job you counted on disappears. A friend betrays you. The plan you've built your year around falls apart in a single phone call. Suddenly, the solid ground under your feet, gone. What do you do when the world shifts? Where do you go when everything external crumbles? That's the question the Stoics built their lives around. And their answer? Build an inner citadel, not a real fortress, not bricks and moats and towers, but a psychological stronghold, a calm, silent center the world cannot reach, and therefore cannot ruin. Marcus Aurelius put it best when he wrote, "People try to retreat to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You can retreat into yourself anytime you want. That's your citadel. It's not a place. It's a mindset. A calm within chaos. A stillness under pressure. A space you return to when the noise gets loud and the crowd gets weird. And the best time to build it, before the storm, not when you're already breaking down, not when the emergency lights are flashing. Then it's too late. You don't learn to swim during the flood, but this kind of fortification, it's invisible. No one sees you laying the bricks. No one claps when you choose calm over rage, dignity over drama, clarity over chaos. Yet each of those moments, that's construction. That's another layer of stone between you and whatever the world hurls your way. Let's get weird for a second. During the reign of Augustus Caesar, there was a Roman philosopher named Musonius Rufus. Unlike the more famous Stoics, he taught that hardship was training, not punishment. He said, "Practice what you fear so you'll be stronger when it arrives." Historians debate how much he actually practiced what he preached, but the idea stuck. Because it wasn't about building walls. It was about building will. So how do you start building your inner citadel? Start by defining your values. If you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. The citadel's foundation is clarity. What do you believe in when no one's watching? What matters to you when applause is gone? Then, train your responses, not your reactions, your responses. Reactions are fast, emotional, usually regrettable. Responses are calm, intentional, rooted. That moment when you don't send the angry text, that's citadel work. When you don't spiral after a bad meeting. More bricks, another essential. Create space inside your day that's yours. Not scroll time, not busy time, but reflective, protective space. Journaling, stillness, a walk without your phone. That's your citadel courtyard. That's where you check in, recharge, repair. Think about a tree in a storm. The branches whip around, leaves fly off, but the trunk, it holds. Why? Because the roots go deep. That's you. The world is going to blow. People will flake, storms will roll in, headlines will freak out. But if your roots are deep, if you've done the inner work, you bend, not break. And no, this doesn't mean you become emotionally numb. The Stoics weren't robots. They felt deeply. They just didn't let the feelings steer the ship. Emotional mastery, not emotional suppression. You feel the sting, but you don't become the sting. You feel the fear, but you act anyway. You feel the sadness, but you keep showing up. That's strength. That's Stoic grace. That's the inner citadel doing its job. Let's talk modern life. Maybe you're ghosted by someone you cared about. Your first instinct? Spin out. Obsess. Check receipts. Wonder what you did wrong. Or you take a breath. Step back. Remind yourself. Their silence doesn't erase my worth. You journal. You reflect. You grow. Brick. Maybe you're overlooked at work. Passed over. Forgotten. You want to lash out. Or you refocus. You double down on skill. You honor your work ethic. You lead yourself. Brick. This is where the citadel becomes real. Not in theory, but in your tiny, silent acts of composure, of restraint, of direction that no one else sees it. But you do. And the more you show up for yourself, the more unshakable you become. Here's a lesser-known historical tidbit. In ancient Rome, soldiers didn't just train with swords. They trained with weapons twice as heavy as what they'd use in battle. Why? Because if they could move those in practice, the real thing would feel light. Your citadel is built the same way. You train under tension. So when life punches, you don't collapse. You absorb. You adapt. Let's be clear, your citadel isn't about control. It's about preparation. It doesn't stop the losses. It softens the landing. It doesn't block the pain. It helps you feel it without becoming it. It doesn't change the world. It changes how the world moves through you. Tonight, ask yourself, where is my stronghold? When chaos hits, where do I retreat to? And is it solid? Or is it made of distractions, numbing, avoidance? Because a true citadel, it doesn't hide you from the world. It prepares you for it. It reminds you that even when everything outside of you is unstable, your mind, your values, your clarity, they're home. And once you've built that, you'll realize something powerful. No matter what happens out there, you are already safe in here. Your inner citadel is your only real home when the world burns. Do you have a calm, fortified space within? It's the end of the day. You've done your part, played your roles, gone through the motions. Maybe you worked hard. Maybe you coasted. Maybe you just survived. And now, as the world slows down and the light dims, you have a choice: collapse into distraction or face the mirror. Because here's the truth the Stoics knew better than most. Daily reflection is power, not power over others. Power over yourself. We live in a world that prizes speed. always on, always scrolling, always doing. Reflection? That's for monks, right? Philosophers with too much time. Wrong. Reflection is how you grow. It's how you course correct. It's how you evolve from reaction to response, from habits to intention. Seneca once said, "Each day I examine my conscience. I look back over my actions and words and reread the whole day." That wasn't a nice idea. It was a discipline, as routine as brushing your teeth. And it works, because what you don't observe, you repeat. And what you don't understand, you become ruled by. Here's a modern parallel. Imagine driving a car with no mirrors, no dashboard, no indicators, just forward motion. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet that's how most people live. Zero feedback, no review, full speed, until they crash. Historians still argue about whether Seneca's nightly self-inventories were as deep as he claimed, or more performative in nature. But it doesn't matter. What matters is the ritual, the pause, the commitment to self-awareness. Let's get tactile. Imagine tonight, before bed, you take 5 quiet minutes. No phone, no distractions, just you and the echo of your day. You ask yourself, where did I act with strength? Where did I shrink? What emotion ruled me today? And did I let it? Who needed more from me? What did I ignore? What did I handle with grace? No judgment. Just data. Just honesty. You don't beat yourself up. You get curious. You notice. You learn that that's the secret most people miss. Reflection isn't punishment. It's freedom. It's how you reclaim authorship of your life. Because when you reflect, you stop living on autopilot. You begin to spot patterns. You realize you've been getting defensive every time someone asks about your goals. Why? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's shame. Now you can address it. Or maybe you notice how much joy you felt during that random 5-minute conversation with a stranger. And it reminds you, connection matters to you, maybe more than you admit. These aren't breakthroughs that shake the earth, but over time, they build you. Reflection isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend, but it transforms. And the best part? No one needs to see it. No one needs to clap. It's you. With you. Here's a fun historical oddity. Pythagoras, the triangle guy, was also big on nighttime reflection. He taught his students to ask 3 questions before bed. What did I do wrong? What did I do right? What did I forget to do? Simple, sharp, effective. Why don't more people do this? Because it's easier to distract than to face yourself. It's easier to scroll than to reflect. It's easier to blame than to ask, what was my role in that? But if you want to grow, not just float, reflection is non-negotiable. And no, you won't like everything you find. Some nights, you'll see where you snapped too fast, lied too casually, avoided the hard thing. That's okay, because seeing it, that's the start of changing it. You can't clean what you won't uncover. Reflection humbles you without humiliating you. It reminds you that you're a work in progress, not broken, just unfinished. And it gives you something else, sleep, not the crash into bed kind, the peaceful, unburdened kind, the kind where your mind isn't spinning, your heart isn't tangled in regret, and your conscience isn't trying to whisper over the Netflix episode playing in the background at you. Already reviewed the day. You've seen yourself. You've made peace, or made a plan to do better. That's rare and powerful, because most people aren't tired from doing too much. They're tired from thinking too much, from carrying the weight of unprocessed moments, from days stacking on top of days with no space to breathe. But when you reflect, you clear space. You reset. You get lighter. You grow without needing the world to notice. And over time, this becomes identity. You stop just trying to live with integrity. You become a person of integrity, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest, because you're awake, and because you keep coming back again and again to ask, how can I do this better tomorrow? So tonight, ask yourself, what did I learn about myself today? If the answer is nothing, it's not because nothing happened, it's because you weren't still enough to notice. But the good news? Tomorrow is another chance. Another day to be a little more awake, a little more intentional, a little more take the 5 minutes. Make the space. Build the habit, because the world will keep spinning fast. But your growth? That requires stillness, reflection, the habit that changes everything. Growth doesn't come from action alone. It comes from observing and adjusting in silence. You wake up and already the mask is halfway on. The I'm fine version of you, polished and practiced, ready to do what needs to be done, ready to smile when it's awkward, ready to keep your opinions soft, your emotions quieter, your doubts locked behind your teeth. Because showing too much? That's risky. But here's the twist. Vulnerability is a strength when you own it. Yeah, that word. Vulnerability. It sounds soft, exposed, a little too emotional. Not exactly the battle-hardened image of Stoicism, right? But let's clear something up. The Stoics weren't about stuffing emotions into a box and throwing away the key. They were about mastering emotions, not pretending they didn't exist. And part of that mastery comes from honestly facing what's going on inside you. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." But bravery isn't about fearlessness. It's about facing fear without letting it dictate your life. And vulnerability? That's fear, uncertainty, discomfort. Met with open eyes, here's the truth you won't hear in most places. Pretending to be strong is exhausting. It drains your energy, your attention, your connection. Every day you spend pretending not to feel something is a day you've spent hiding. And what's worse, most of the time, you're not fooling anyone. People can feel when you're guarded. They can sense the tightness in your voice, the carefulness in your posture, the way you hold back. And instead of seeing confidence, they just feel distance. So, what's the alternative? Own it, not perform it. Not cry on camera for likes. Not turn your pain into a brand. Just own it. To yourself first. Then maybe, when earned, to someone you trust. Imagine this. You're feeling overwhelmed. Your inner critic is loud, and your thoughts are scattered. Normally, you'd push through. Pretend it's fine. Slap on the grin and power forward. But instead, you pause. You name it. I'm not okay right now. I'm anxious. I'm scattered. I feel like I'm failing. You don't post it. You don't dramatize it. You just say it to yourself. That moment, that's strength. That's awareness. That's vulnerability. Without spectacle. Here's something wild. The Stoics were so into self-awareness that they would rehearse their own death. Not because they were morbid, but because they wanted to face what most people hide from. They called it memento mori, remember you will die. Sounds dark, right? But it wasn't about fear. It was about facing reality without flinching. Historians argue whether this practice was meant to inspire detachment or depth. But either way, the Stoics weren't about denial. They were about truth. Even the hard parts. Let's bring this closer to your life. Say you made a mistake at work, in a relationship, in a moment of weakness. The easy thing: blame, deflect, minimize. But the strong thing? That was on me. Simple, honest, no drama, no spiral, just ownership. That's vulnerability. It's not about bleeding all over the floor. It's about saying, I see this, I accept this, and I'll grow from it. And when you live that way, something amazing happens. You build trust, not just with others, but with yourself. You stop being afraid of what might surface if you get quiet. You stop running from the mirror, and you realize that your emotions, even the messy, unflattering ones, aren't enemies. They're signals, invitations. They're saying something inside you needs care, not control. We're not taught this. We're taught to armor up, be productive, push through, smile harder. But the more armor you wear, the more distant you feel from your own life. That's not strength. That's survival. And you weren't built just to survive. You were built to live. Let's take it further. Vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing. It doesn't mean dumping your whole life story on every stranger. That's not brave, that's broadcasting. Real vulnerability is about choosing honesty with discernment, being real with the people who have earned your trust, and being even more real with yourself. Imagine someone asks you how you're doing, and instead of your usual, yeah, all good, you pause, you breathe, and you say something closer to the truth. Honestly, today's been tough. I'm figuring it out. Not a breakdown, just honesty. That kind of presence, it's rare, and people can feel it. Why? Because it gives them permission to. When you're real, you create space for others to be real. And connection starts there, not through perfection, but through shared humanity. Here's an odd historical detail. In ancient Roman triumphs, those big parades celebrating a general's victory, a slave would stand behind the victor, whispering, "Remember, you are only human." Vulnerability, even then, was a necessary counterweight to glory. The higher you rise, the more vital it is to stay grounded in your imperfections. Ask yourself tonight, what part of me am I hiding from others? From myself? What emotion have I been stuffing down, hoping it will go away? What truth do I keep dodging? And what would change if I stopped running and started listening? Because when you own your vulnerability, it doesn't own you. It becomes fuel, insight, even strength. You start building from a place that's real, not polished, not perfect, but honest, and people feel that. You feel that. You start waking up without the weight of the mask. You start speaking without editing your soul. You start living in your own skin, fully, unashamed. So tonight, if you've been holding something in, ask, is this serving me or just keeping me stuck? And if the answer is the latter, maybe, just maybe, it's time to let it out. Gently, privately, but fully, because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'm ready to feel this. And that whisper, that's where your real power lives. Vulnerability equals power you've owned. Owning your emotions, not hiding them, is how real Stoic strength begins. Let's talk about pain. Not the paper cut kind. Not the forgot my password again kind. The real kind. The kind that cracks your voice, tightens your chest, and makes the world feel like it tilted just a bit out of reach. That kind of pain, loss, rejection, failure, betrayal, disappointment so deep it echoes. And yet, the Stoics never told us to avoid it. They told us something more radical. Resilience means using pain as fuel. Now, before you roll your eyes or think. This is just another motivational slogan. Let's be real. Some pain just hurts. You don't need to smile through it or pretend it's poetic. Some days are just hard. Some chapters break you. But here's what the Stoics knew. Broken doesn't mean finished. Pain is not the end of the story. It's the middle. And if you face it, not flee it, it can become the very force that transforms you. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It's one of the most quoted Stoic lines for a reason, because it flips the script. Your heartbreak? A deeper well for empathy. Your failure? A sharpened focus. Your grief? A greater appreciation for what remains. But here's the hard part. You have to choose it. Pain by itself just wounds. Only when you meet it with courage does it become fuel that lets be clear. The Stoics didn't romanticize suffering. They didn't go looking for pain. They just refused to waste it. They believed that every obstacle, every setback, every sorrow had within it a question. Who will you become because of this? And historians still debate how Stoicism played out in times of real political upheaval. Was it used to resist, to endure, or to detach? But the one thread that always remained was this. Pain is practice. Think about that. Your pain is not a punishment. It's preparation. Let's zoom in. You've been betrayed. It stings. You could close off, harden, swear never to trust again. Or you could choose to open again, this time with wisdom, with boundaries, with clarity. That choice? That's resilience.org. Maybe you failed. Publicly. It rattled your confidence. You could stay safe now. Avoid risk. Or you could get back up. Not because you're sure of success, but because you're committed to growth. That too is resilience. Or maybe you feel lost. Purpose faded. Direction blurred. You could numb out. Disappear. But what if, instead, you sat with the discomfort, asked it what it's pointing to, let it teach you. That's where transformation begins. Here's a weird historical tidbit for you. Ancient Spartan mothers were known for saying to their sons, "Come back with your shield, or on it." Harsh. Absolutely. But it wasn't just about battle. It was about honor, about not letting fear or pain define your choices. Resilience doesn't mean you're unaffected. It means you're undeterred. You still cry, still ache, still question. But you don't quit. You keep showing up, not because it's easy, but because it matters. And little by little, you begin to realize the pain didn't weaken you. It refined you, not into someone colder, but someone clearer. Not into someone tougher, but someone truer. And here's the part most people never talk about. Resilience doesn't always feel like strength. Sometimes, it feels like waking up and making breakfast when your heart is heavy. Like returning that phone call even though you're drained. Like choosing to hope, even quietly, when everything tells you not to. That quiet defiance. That's the real stuff. And no, it's not fast. Pain doesn't flip into power overnight. There's a space between the wound and the wisdom, between the fall and the rise, between what happened and what you'll do next. That space. That's where resilience is forged. How do you train for it? Start by not rushing the pain away. Let yourself feel it. Not wallow, but witness. Name it. Write it. Talk to it like an old, unwanted friend. Ask it, what are you here to show me? And then, when the time is right, ACTDO something small, meaningful, honest. Something that says, I'm still here, still trying, still building. Brick by brick, you'll feel yourself return, not as who you were, but as someone forged through fire. Stronger not in spite of the burn, but because of it. Remember this, the Stoics didn't rise by avoiding the storm. They rose by becoming calm within it.so ask yourself tonight, what pain am I carrying? And what can I learn from it? What would it mean to let this be fuel? Because resilience isn't about looking tough, it's about living true, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Use pain. Don't waste it. Every scar is a doorway. If you're willing to ask what it came to teach you, let's say you're doing something bold. Maybe you've started setting boundaries. Maybe you're creating something from scratch. Maybe you're changing direction, leaving what's safe, expected, familiar, and suddenly the noise starts. Are you sure that's smart? That seems risky. You've changed. The pressure creeps in. The doubts multiply. You start second-guessing not because you've lost clarity, but because you've started noticing their reactions. But here's the Stoic reality. Focus on your path, not their reactions. Because if your direction depends on what they think, say, or misunderstand, then you're not walking your path. You're walking theirs. And that's how so many people get lost. They start with fire, with purpose, with a clear inner knowing. And then someone raises an eyebrow, posts a passive-aggressive comment, pulls away, and slowly, subtly, the fire dims. Not because the purpose changed, but because people didn't clap. But clapping isn't the goal. The goal is alignment. The goal is peace. The kind that comes when your actions match your values, whether or not the crowd gets it. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Historians still argue whether Epictetus's teachings were designed to produce rebels or saints. But either way, his message was clear. Growth rarely gets a standing ovation, especially not at the beginning. In fact, the more you evolve, the more you'll unsettle the people who prefer the old version of you. The version that didn't challenge the norm. The one that kept the peace, even at your own expense. But their discomfort? That's not your burden. Let's be real. Some people love the old you because you were predictable, contained, palatable. Now you're setting boundaries, prioritizing your energy, choosing purpose over people-pleasing. Of course, they're confused. That doesn't mean you're wrong. That means you're growing. And not everyone will come with you. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. Here's a practical example. You decide to pursue a path that's unconventional, a new career, a new lifestyle, a move that makes sense to your soul, but not to your circle. The reactions come in waves: doubt, dismissal, even subtle jealousy. If you're not anchored, their reactions start to shape your behavior. You shrink. You backpedal. You start editing yourself, but editing yourself for others? That's how masterpieces become mediocre. Think of your life like a road. You walk forward. Some walk with you. Some fall behind. Some take a different turn entirely. That's okay. You don't need to herd them. You just need to keep walking. And here's a weird but delightful historical tidbit. Diogenes, the Greek philosopher who literally lived in a barrel, once walked through the streets in broad daylight holding a lantern, claiming he was looking for an honest man. He was ridiculed, laughed at, called insane. But centuries later, we're still quoting him. Why? Because he didn't let their reactions dilute his purpose, and neither should you. The Stoic mindset isn't about arrogance, it's about emotional independence. It's saying, I will love you, respect you, listen to you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you comfortable. And when you really adopt this, everything shifts. You no longer chase validation. You no longer explain every choice. You no longer twist your truth into something soft enough for everyone to swallow. You start walking quietly, intentionally, confident in the knowing that not everyone will get it. And that's okay. Let's take it even further. You begin to expect misunderstanding, not because you're being controversial, but because truth always rattles comfort. You begin to expect discomfort, not as a threat, but as a sign you're moving. You begin to expect silence, not as rejection, but as space to deepen your own voice. Because the Stoics didn't say, seek approval. They said, seek alignment. So, how do you know if you're on your path? It won't always feel easy, but it will feel true, even when others question it, even when you walk alone, even when their reactions are loud. Here's a practice to try. When you make a decision, ask yourself, why am I doing this? If the answer includes anything like, so they'll understand me, or so they'll approve, pause. That you've already handed the wheel to someone else. But if the answer is, because this aligns with who I'm becoming, then walk on, even if they don't clap. Especially if they don't clap, because applause fades and confusion passes, but integrity, that sticks. So tonight, ask yourself, whose approval am I still chasing? And what would happen if I stopped? What if I chose my path fully and let them have their reactions? What if I gave people the dignity of misunderstanding me? Because that, right there, is peace. That's the quiet power of self-respect. The kind of strength that walks forward, not because it's validated, but because it's true. And if no one ever clapped, if no one ever agreed, would you still walk this road? If the answer is yes, then you've already won. Ignore the crowd. Focus your path. Their confusion isn't your burden. Your clarity isn't theirs to validate that it's 6 a.m. Your alarm buzzes. You're tired, uninspired, and your bed is whispering sweet nothings. No one's watching. No one would blame you if you hit snooze again, but you get up. No applause. No parade. Just movement. That right there? That's discipline. And here's the Stoic truth. Discipline equals self-respect in motion, not punishment. Not grind culture. Not martyrdom. Just the quiet act of showing up for yourself because you said you would. You see, a lot of people confuse discipline with harshness, as if it's some kind of joyless march toward achievement. But Stoic discipline isn't about suffering. It's about alignment, doing what matters consistently, regardless of mood, convenience, or whether it's trending on your feed. That it's not glamorous. It doesn't get likes, but it changes everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." That's not just a motivational quote. That's a man, an emperor, by the way, telling himself to stop whining and do the work. Historians still wrestle with how Marcus balanced ruling the Roman Empire while keeping his Stoic principles intact. Did he struggle? Almost certainly. But he kept writing, kept reminding himself what mattered, kept choosing discipline. Even when power could have made him lazy. That's the model. What does discipline look like in your life? It's showing up at the gym even when your playlist feels stale. It's making the phone call even though you'd rather scroll. It's saying no to the extra drink, the shortcut, the temptation, not because it's bad, but because it moves you away from who you're becoming. Discipline is love in action, not love for results. Love for your future self. And here's the part no one tells you. Discipline is a decision you make long before the moment arrives. When the craving hits, when the doubt creeps in, when your energy is low, you don't decide then. You remember you. Remember the promise you made, the identity you're building. You don't rise to the level of your feelings. You rise to the level of your preparation. Here's a quirky historical nugget. The Spartans were known not just for their combat skills, but for how boringly consistent they were. Same meals, same training, same routines. Why? Because freedom, to them, didn't come from doing what you feel. It came from doing what you chose. You want to feel proud of yourself? Start keeping your promises when no one's looking. You want self-respect? Stop breaking deals with yourself. Because every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," and don't, a little crack appears. And those cracks, they turn into doubt, into shame, into that creeping suspicion that maybe you're not who you say you are. But every time you follow through, even in a small way, you reinforce your foundation. You say, "I am who I said I'd be." And that matters more than any goal you're chasing, because goals come and go. Circumstances change. Outcomes shift. But your identity, that's what you wake up with. That's what discipline builds, brick by brick. And no, it won't always feel good. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it's deeply unfun. But fun isn't the point. Freedom is. Peace is. Self-trust is. And that's what discipline gives you. Not just better habits, but a quieter mind. You don't second-guess yourself all the time because you know you'll follow through. You don't get stuck in shame spirals because you know you've been showing up. You walk into rooms differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself like someone who's not here to impress, but to build. And yes, you will fall off. You will miss days. You will break the streak. So what? The Stoic doesn't seek perfection. They seek progress. They aim for steadiness, not glory. They rise again. They return, because discipline isn't a straight line. It's a rhythm, a practice, a relationship point, one you get better at with time. What does this look like for you tonight? Maybe it's journaling when you'd rather zone out. Maybe it's setting your clothes out for tomorrow so the decision's already made. Maybe it's texting a friend your goal, not for validation, but for accountability. Small things, quiet things, but they compound. And over time, they build something unshakable, a self you can respect, not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful to your values, to your vision, to your path. Tonight, ask yourself, what promise have I been breaking with myself? What would shift if I kept it, just for one day? And what kind of person would I become if I made that my new normal? Because you don't need more motivation. You need more follow-through, not for the applause, but for the peace of knowing you're becoming someone solid, steady, free. And that kind of freedom, it begins with discipline. Discipline equals self-respect in motion. Your daily choices aren't small. They're bricks in the foundation of who you become. You keep scrolling. Another post, another achievement, someone else's highlight reel playing out like a soundtrack to your insecurity. You don't even mean to compare, but it sneaks in anyway. She's doing more. He's already there. Why am I not further along? It's subtle, it's constant, and it's exhausting. But here's the Stoic reminder that cuts through the noise. You already have enough to begin, not someday, not when you feel ready, Not when you have the perfect plan, the perfect body, the perfect resume. Now, you are not waiting to be worthy. You're not in a holding pattern waiting for permission. The runway is clear. The only thing stopping the flight? The story you're telling yourself about needing more before you start. The Stoics would laugh, softly, kindly, at how often we forget this. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Historians still debate how deeply Marcus believed his own advice, especially while facing wars, plagues, and political unrest. But his daily meditations remind us the outer world doesn't grant readiness. Your choice does. What are you waiting for? Confidence. That's built through action, not before it. Clarity. It comes while walking the path, not sitting at the starting line. Perfection? That's an illusion designed to keep you frozen. Let's zoom in. You want to start creating, writing, painting, building, teaching, but you hesitate. You think you need more training, more gear, more time. But what if you just started? Quietly, imperfectly, authentically. Or you want to change your health. But instead of walking today, you spend 2 hours researching the best shoes, the ideal routine, the optimal supplement stack. That's not preparation. That's delay. You have what you need: a body, a mind, a will. And here's the secret. Most progress starts looking embarrassingly small. One push-up, one awkward sentence, $1 saved. But small isn't failure. Small is honest. There's an ancient Roman phrase, festina lente, make haste slowly. It's about deliberate motion, quiet momentum, no flash, no frenzy, just beginning with what you have, where you are. And here's a fringe historical tidbit. Some ancient Stoics practiced walking barefoot in winter, not because they enjoyed frostbite, but to train themselves to stop needing comfort to act. They didn't wait for ideal conditions. They acted despite the conditions. You can too, but you have to release the myth that you're not enough yet. You have to drop the narrative that someone out there knows better, is more qualified, is more deserving. They might be more visible, but they're not more worthy. And one has a monopoly on momentum. And here's another thing. You don't need to feel ready to be ready. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Am I confident?" They ask, "Is this aligned?" If yes, they begin, shaky hands and all. Think about a baby learning to walk. They fall, they waddle, they bump into tables, but they don't say, "This isn't my path." They just get up again. That's wisdom. We forget as adults that we think if it's hard, we're failing. If it's slow, we're behind. If it's quiet, it's not valid. But truth? The most powerful changes often begin in silence, and no one notices. No one praises. Just you, making a tiny decision to move forward, without applause, without clarity, without guarantees. That's Stoicism. That's strength. Let's make this personal. What have you been waiting to start? What story have you been telling yourself about why it's not time yet? What invisible gatekeeper are you waiting for to say now you may begin? Because that permission slip, it's not coming that you're the only one who can sign it, that you're the only one who knows what quiet thing is calling from inside you, asking to be nurtured, started, tested, even if it's small. Even if you're unsure. Tonight, ask yourself, what? Can I begin with what I already have? Not a leap, just a step, not a breakthrough, just a movement. Because motion, no matter how subtle, is sacred. And no, you won't feel heroic. You won't feel powerful. You'll feel clumsy. You'll feel behind. You'll feel like maybe you're doing it wrong. Do it anyway. Start anyway. Live anyway. Because your life isn't waiting on more stuff. It's waiting on more you that you've already got what matters. A clear mind, a willing heart, and a soul that knows what's true. Even if it's scared, so begin. Quietly. Imperfectly. Now. You already have enough to begin. Let go of waiting, wanting, comparing, because building your inner life starts now. You're here now. At the end of the day, at the end of this series of lessons, sitting quietly with yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to feel something you didn't expect. Not motivation, not inspiration, but stillness, that gentle hum of, I don't need to chase anymore. Because the truth, the one Stoicism has whispered through every section, is this: you already have what you need. Now build from it. This isn't about striving. It's about aligning that you've been given lessons, 12 of them, each one a thread in the same tapestry. Nobody's coming to rescue you. No one's applause is required. The world may never notice your quiet effort, and that's exactly why. You must keep going, because now you understand your power is internal. Your path is personal, and your peace doesn't need a spotlight. Remember, the Stoics weren't trying to be remembered. They were trying to be real. They left behind no grand empires, no armies, no viral brands. What they left behind were tools, mindsets, disciplines, reflections, ways to survive the world without becoming hardened by it. And now, you have those tools too. So what now? Now, you build, not fast, not loud, but with clarity, with discipline, with the kind of consistency that doesn't need recognition because it's built on respect, self-respect. Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow and you start small. Not because you lack ambition, but because you understand that small is where momentum lives. You begin the work without checking who's watching. You say no when you need to. You say yes when it aligns, not when it pleases. You reflect daily. You walk away from things that shrink you. You speak up even if your voice shakes. You rest when you need to, not as escape, but as restoration. And slowly, you become unshakable, not invulnerable, not untouchable, but rooted. Because here's what no one tells you about inner power. It's quiet. It's subtle. It doesn't need defense. It doesn't need display. It simply is that's what you're building now. A life that stands, even when no one claps. A character that holds, even when storms come. A presence that speaks, not to impress, but because it has something to say. And if you've ever felt unseen, misunderstood, or undervalued, good. That was your invitation to stop outsourcing your worth. Stop editing yourself for approval. Stop waiting, because now you've got a direction, a set of values, a strength no one gave you and no one can take. And with that, we begin the wind down. You're lying there now, perhaps a little heavier with thought, but also, somehow, lighter. The kind of lightness that comes when you stop holding so tightly to things that don't belong to you. Other people's opinions, their confusion, their expectations, their applause. Let it all fall away now. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. Let the words from earlier echo gently, not to provoke, but to soothe. No pressure to remember everything. The lessons are already in you, like seeds, quiet, patient, waiting for the next decision, the next moment of choice. Maybe tomorrow you'll wake with the same problems. the same noise, but you'll be different. You'll move from your center. You'll see where you once reacted, and now you can pause. You'll notice how much of your life you were spending trying to be understood, when what you really needed was to understand yourself. Exhale now, slow, full, easy. Feel your body settle into this moment. This rare moment where nothing is asked of you. No one needs anything. No one's watching. You don't have to prove, or perform, or figure anything out. You just rest, knowing that what you're building isn't dependent on being seen. It's built in the dark, in silence, in discipline, in truth, and that kind of life lasts. Sleep well, you quiet warrior, sweet dreams.